Like, yeah,
Can I join?
Yeah.
All right, guys, let me join. Yeah, let me do it.
No. We're going to keep
We
our
really rocking on them, you
conversation
feel me?
school appropriate and non-violent. Thank you.
I mean, I'm not violent.
This would look better than this one.
I don't have to be violent to slap a
All
hoe.
of the above. All of the above laughs.
These look a lot better than this.
I thought Mr. Nicky's were looking really good. His bok choys are looking good. My lunch is looking good.
Well, he's been trying to check the pH.
Oh my god. Why did you get that beauty?
If I start crying, I thought I was the best for a minute. I'm really about to cry.
You're alright. I understand.
I was really about to cry. That was the best.
But don't they have like their own like?
I know these blankets are nice, but I still like blankets on it.
Don't they have their own like homemade bus?
Yeah, they have
Oh, that big white bus.
yeah. They have plugins in it so they can charge your phone.
Alright guys, let's get our eyes and ears ready to learn and I'll tell you what we're doing today.
Alright.
You already told me.
Well, you're in the know. Good breathe out.
Alright, I just need to go outside.
If we have all our work done, we can go to the greenhouse.
I mean,
And check out our little beans.
okay, we just go outside right now.
Hey, you was another day, so this should be. Yeah, this should be nice.
Alright guys, so we're gonna start today with a read aloud from this book. And then we're gonna
No!
I'm sorry, Brooklyn. I know that's upsetting for you.
Are we reading it aloud?
I'm sorry. Unless you would like to. Alright, so first we'll talk about this book, then we'll do a small reflection on our Flint Hills unit, and then we'll catch up on any missing assignments. So this book is called The Prairie Builders, Reconstructing America's Lost Grasslands. So we learned, right, that our tall grass prairies have our tall grass prairies have shrunk to 1% of their original size, right? Only 1%. It is one of the most endangered environments, more so than the coral reefs.
I thought.
Yeah, so you're right, Jonathan, that there are tall grasses, there are grassland prairies in places like Africa, Mongolia, Canada has some. But because of urbanization and modern agriculture, from thousands of years ago where they spread miles and miles and miles, they've shrunk to only 1% of their original size.
In the U.S.?
Worldwide.
Worldwide?
Yep. We gotta look after our grasslands because we know they support a large ecosystem, right? So this book was written by a fellow called Snee Collard III.
Snee?
Snee. And what this guy does, he is a professional photographer and an ecologist. Like the graduate students that came talk to us. And what he does is this is one of a series. He travels to different areas and talks to scientists, and then he writes books about what those scientists are studying. And in this book, he is talking with scientists like the people at the continent who are rebuilding prairie lands. So, let's keep our phones away and get ready to listen. Burning and learning. To rebuild the prairie, Pauline and her colleagues, the scientists, rely on many different tools. One of the most important, fire. Many natural ecosystems need fire to stay healthy. Fire clears away dead vegetation and many larger woody plants. Fire also allows light to reach new plants, releases nutrients into the soil, and creates a blackened soil surface that warms quickly, giving plants a jump start as they begin growing each spring. What you doing, bud?
I
You wanna find a chair?
mean, I'm kind of comfy, but I'll get over.
Thanks, buddy. So we saw that at the Kanza Prairie, right? We drove through those different lots. Some of the lots were burned every year, some every 3 years, some every 10 years, and some every 20 years. What sort of plants were growing in the lots that were only burned every 20 years?
Like,
Yeah, woody plants like trees and shrubs were growing. What about our lots that were burned every year? Grass, lots of nice healthy grass. So we can use burning to control what types of plants can be successful in the grasslands.
Do grass blades really cut you? Or is it just
I think some types can. Kind of like a paper cut.
I used to have custom
Ew.
my feet.
I don't
Do-
like it.
Do kids here do corn husking in the
I have no idea.
detasseling in the summer? Is that a job here? Or
I
is that
know-
an Indiana thing? That's an Indiana thing. All right. So I'm from Indiana, and you know how you guys grow a lot of wheat and have a lot of cows around here? In Indiana, we have a lot of corn. And the top of the corn stalks has this little fluffy thing on it, and that has a lot of seeds. So if a farmer's trying to grow corn and those seeds get blown away, it grows corn in places they don't want corn. So a job a lot of Indiana kids have in the summer is detasseling, where they're paid to walk through the corn and cut the seeds off and collect them. And the reason I thought of that is because the corn leaves, those big green leaves, can give you cuts. So kids have to wear like long sleeves.
Did you do that?
I am from a rural community. I did not detassel because it was an awful job. I worked at my barn.
Oh,
Again, I
like
am from a rural community. All right, continuing on with the prairie lands. Before white settlers arrived, Native Americans set fire to the prairies every year. The fire stimulated growth of new prairie plants, which in turn fed bison.
Oh my god, I didn't know that.
Yay!
Wow.
And other animals people depended on. Woohoo!
Why are you always here so late?
Woohoo!
I got excused.
He was here.
Oh,
You're good.
here
He was
You're
here,
good.
bro.
Tell me. So the fire brings new grass on
My
which the
bad.
bison
Sorry, it's okay.
can thrive. Without fire, in fact, biodiversity, which is the variety of plants and animal species, dwindles. So yeah, it's gone. Just a few species end up crowding out all the others, and the land becomes stagnant and less productive. To turn farm fields into prairie, Pauline and her colleagues used fire as Native Americans did. They began by sprinkling the seeds of prairie plants across a barren corn or soybean field. The first year, you get a lot of weeds, Pauline explains. These include exotic species such as red clover and Queen Anne's lace that don't belong here. But we mow the fields the first 2 years, possibly 3, and this gets rid of many of the weeds. Beginning in the 3rd or 4th year, we start burning wherever we can. Usually, by the 4th year, the field is looking good. Even a lousy burn invigorates native plants and promotes things in ways that wouldn't happen without fire. So, can we turn agricultural fields back into prairies?
Yeah, it just takes years.
Yeah, it just takes a couple of years, right? Yeah. So we can take an unused soybean field and put nutrients back into the soil by mixing in those weeds that we don't want anymore as a natural fertilizer, by burning to add in more carbon and nitrogen. I like how you're sitting in that chair, buddy.
Got white
You
girl
should
here.
actually burn.
You got white girl here in this channel.
We should burn stuff in the greenhouse.
In the greenhouse.
In the greenhouse?
We're all gonna die.
That greenhouse is
What
already
would
hot, you
happen
feel
if
me?
we set the greenhouse on fire?
We have bonfires.
We'd
Yo,
have like
did you know
fire.
if glass heats up too much, explodes?
It does explode.
Because my mom had a glass lid on the stove.
Oh.
She kind of being dumb.
Yeah.
You know, some
that
Yeah,
before
yeah.
too. Yeah.
Last was everywhere.
Yeah, it shatters
Last was
everywhere.
everywhere.
I wouldn't mind it. I'm not clean.
Alright guys, we're almost done. Keep your attention on me. One reason prairie plants survive fire so well is because of their biomass. Their living tissues are underground. Remember?
Smart.
Where do grasses keep their living part? Under the ground. That's why we can mow it and it keeps growing back year, time after time. In a tree, most of the plant's biomass is in the trunk, branches, and leaves. So what happens if you chop down a tree?
It
follows.
Yeah, does it grow back?
Yeah.
No, if you cut a tree down, it's not going to grow back. What happens if you cut grass?
It grows down.
It grows back because the biomass is under the soil.
You gotta put on a whole new tree, a whole new sapling.
You're right. Prairie plants, though, keep about 75 to 80% of their biomass stored in roots hidden below the ground. When fire comes, it burns away the plant's stems and leaves, but plenty of reserves remain underground to help the plant sprout again.
So, do they evolve better?
I mean, like, since it said that it's like more green and more large every single time, so I think when doing so, they're just using.
So I'm not sure if it's an evolutionary thing because I haven't studied like generations of plants, but it does promote new growth, right? And they talk about how that new growth is like the healthiest part of the plant. Okay, so this next section and the last section is called natural lawnmowers. What do you guys think they mean by a natural lawnmower? Bison, yeah.
Oh, so they eat like chewing.
They be eating that grass.
So wait, so that's what the holes were, right? When we seen them in like really big holes in the ground.
When they
Well,
were-
no, it weren't holes,
they
but it was
were-
like.
Nah,
Yeah,
those
that
was
was
them-
them rolling in
Yeah,
the
that was
ground
them
to get
rolling.
covered
They
in
make
mud.
them big old holes.
I mean,
It's
how
like
heavy
it's
they
like their
are.
blood spread. It's like they're off.
So they could be there for thousands, hundreds
Yeah,
of years.
it's like they're off. Like whenever
I
they
Yeah.
know,
go,
know in the country, like the big ones, not the poops, the big ones.
Yep, the
Yeah.
big holes were from the bison rolling in the dirt.
to keep bugs off of them.
Exactly.
It's like a bug spread.
Just imagine if they rolled on.
Because remember how big
I
they
wouldn't
were?
like that.
Remember how big they were? They weighed over 1,000 pounds. That's like a small car. Imagine if a car was rolling in the dirt. That'd make a hole.
That wouldn't make sense.
That's scary.
She's like,
Don't play roll
"Oh,
over with them.
Low key.
Roll over.
All right, guys, let's learn about these bison.
Low key, the bisons were more scared of us than we were of them.
They were,
Yeah, I wouldn't go dancing. I would be scared of this one.
because they are prey animals.
Every single time we came up, they started pooping.
Yeah, they're like
Yo, one was pooping and eating at the same time. I was like,
Yeah,
man,
they
that's
did talk
multitasking
about
at its
it.
finest, bro. I was like,
So those wolves and snakes up?
No, we don't have wolves here.
Oh, no.
we was kind of weird.
We have coyotes
We
right
have
there.
coyotes,
No,
which are
weird
too
enough
small to
because-
eat a bison.
It was
They
moving
check
and
out.
eating and staring at me, so I was kind of weirded out. So I had to walk away. You feel
Safe
me?
choice.
Yes,
We
oh.
do have foxes, which would be too small to eat a
Oh,
bison.
God. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bison.
Hey, that's cool.
All right, guys,
Yes, ma'am.
focus back in. I know it's Friday. I know
I'm
it's
Miss.
hard,
We
but
ready?
let's finish this up. Mowing and fire are not the only tools for managing a prairie. Pauline and her co-workers sometimes spray herbicides on exotic weeds such as reed canary grasses that are especially tough to kill. One of their most interesting tools is also the most popular with visitors, bison. When the Neil Smith Refuge began, managers wanted to get bison onto their new prairie as quickly as possible. Bison, or buffalo, were once as important to prairie as fire. By regularly clipping tall grasses, bison encourage new plant growth and keep dead stems, leaves, and other fuel from choking the prairie. Bison dung also recycles important nutrients back into the soil and provides food for a variety of beetles and other invertebrates.
When they poop, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So the manure they make puts nutrients back into the soil. That's called
Makes
green
sense.
fertilizer.
Green. I'm guessing
That's why you know when all the dinosaurs died and stuff, you know, there's
Yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff growing.
she
and
didn't
stuff,
even
you know,
hesitate
yeah.
to pick up buffalo shit. She was like, oh, you know, it's a normal thing.
It was dried up. It wasn't like it was stinking.
Yeah, it didn't stink.
Nah.
I mean, it
Alright.
didn't stink at all. Actually.
The guy who was holding it
Last
and
bit.
it was falling apart.
14 of the giant
That's
animals arrived in 1996.
I was born back then.
Only 14.
Stop it on
13 more arrived the following year. The bison were placed in a 700-acre enclosure set aside for them. A small herd of elk was also brought in. Managers weren't sure how the bison and elk would do, but the animals thrived in their new environment. In
I
fact,
thought the
this is about a different prairie.
oh.
But you're right. They did talk about bringing elk into Kanza, and Kanza was like, nah, we're good with the bison.
Now.
There was some deer there though. Like, was
There
some
were a
deer.
lot of deer.
Yeah, but no. no.
In fact, those 14 bison did 2 well.
So what happens if one of those get out?
I don't know.
Because they just run.
Well, they're herd animals,
There's a
so they
YouTube video
probably
about
just
it.
walk back to their herd.
Oh.
Someone asked that on the field trip, and they said they've never actually had a bison get out. The only thing that's happened was a baby like stepped through the fence, and then when the people came, it ran back to its mom.
Oh, okay, well that's good.
In
That
1997,
grass, you saw that
the
good grass?
first bison calf was born on the refuge. During the next 5 years, more than 24 additional baby bison were born, along with a number of elk calves. By 2001, 74 bison lived at the refuge. So from 14 to 74.
Well, they just populate.
Hey, popping out babies left or right?
Too many for the enclosure they lived in. Refuge managers reduced the herd by donating extra bison to Native American tribes so they could start their own herds. Today, managers continue to keep the refuge herd at a size that the prairie meadows can support. So, who remembers how many bison they had out at Kanza?
300.
About
That's
300.
the
'Cause
math.
they sold
Yes.
and they had like 125.
Yeah, so they had about 300, which was the maximum amount that the land could support.
So what are they selling?
So they can have new babies.
What happened if you had 300 cows and then next year they have
Like,
30 babies?
no, they would have
Oh,
like
yeah.
100 babies.
330.
So they making money, getting money.
Didn't
at
they
the
have
same
like
time.
95 babies?
I need to get with
I
them.
think
That's a
they
hustle.
That's crazy.
So,
They busy.
but remember,
Often
they,
now.
acres per.
I thought they said 30 acres per cow.
Dang, bro.
30.
Yeah. So, I really appreciated the conversations we were having during that read. You guys certainly learned a lot. And I want you guys. You want to come in? I want you guys to continue reflecting on. Is that the marching band?
I don't know, bro.
Oh,
No.
no.
They're going on the bus.
Have you ever
So
noticed?
They're going to Wichita, sorry.
I want you guys to continue reflecting on all the things we've learned about, okay? I want you guys to think about only one thing
That's not for the bed.
that was interesting to you, one topic. So that might be the native plants, the 5 types of tall grass. That might be the indigenous food we ate last week. That might be going to Kanza. That might be the bison or the fire. Whatever topic we've talked about this last week that has interested you, I want you to reflect upon and then write a 1-paragraph response. So a paragraph is how many complete sentences?
5.
4 to 5.
That's too much.
4 to 5 complete sentences. So, in those sentences, I want you guys to describe why it was interesting, what else you want to learn, and what it is. And then, if you finish that up, we'll make sure the rest of your assignments are all turned in. So, your 4 sentences can be the topic you're choosing, why it was interesting,
just discipline.
Let's do four.
Does anybody need me to write and you dictate? Hey. Or you dictate all that?
It was fantastic.
So my ball just walked up this morning and ran away, right?
If you put it in paper.
Yeah, sure.
So my ball just, that's cool. That's cool, right?
You want to stop?
Oh, no.
Oh, downstairs.
Yeah.
My ball fell off my hand. This one
Take him off.
ran away.
No, I'm not taking off that.
Cheyenne, do you want to go see Miss
No,
Thomas
this one.
upstairs?
I want to go see Thomas.
Hurry! I will have Miss Thomas come see us if she has time. We all love Miss Thomas.
Who's that?
A
Can we do
reflection.
Buffalo? A reflection of what?
Can we do Buffalo?
Oh, the bike.
Did you like the?
If you would like to go buy a new hat, if you would like help writing it.
What about
No.
the soup you made?
Oh, yeah.
And, what more would you
It's
like?
healthier than cayenne. Do you want me to help you write what?
I'm putting.
I mean,
My ball fell off.
That ain't mine.
What do you mean your ball fell off?
Those toothpaste
Off my
things
hat.
that came and
Do you want me to fix it for you?
I don't know where it is.
Oh, well if you find it, I can take it home and sew it back on.
What do you want it to be like?
You want Miss Anita to help?
If it's not home, I bring it to you on Monday.
I can write mine.
Sure, I can try it for you.
Nah, it was on my hat.
You definitely can.
And it's each.
Alright, we're fucking so.
They do have four
I'm
stuff.
trying to say how I live.
I'm ready to head out.
I'm gonna say my boyfriend.
Can
Everything
we?
is good.
No.
If you guys
I told him I want lots of pictures.
I can help you write. Do you want me to help you?
There you go, yeah. There you go.
Okay, you gotta tell me though.
Man, I wasn't even paying attention.
Well, what's something we talked about this week?
I don't know.
I think
What
it
those
needs to be
girls
there.
talk about. Like
The
when you
first
talk
is
to us.
sweet.
When I said with cracking cuz.
Yes. When you said what's cracking cuz.
That's
That's big
the
behind.
recording. You gotta cut that out. You gotta cut that out.
Okay, I'll cut it out. So, oh, are you just going for it?
I'm gonna put my knee
Oh,
in.
sounds good.
I need music in my life first.
That's okay. Music helps you vibe.
When they going?
Okay.
Are you sitting on Tony Witches already?
I was told the band wasn't leaving.
That was not
That's
bad.
not bad.
Well, that wasn't the band because.
That's not band, that was science.
Yeah.
That was
That was
science.
science.
Oh yeah, they're doing the egg drop.
Oh yeah. Well, Mr. Adams, he
With
came
their
to our class. He used our
cars.
stuff for fourth hour. He told us.
Yeah, one of my
Where they going?
fourth hour kids was
I guess it's somewhere.
They're going over to the back area to drop eggs.
So why didn't they get on the
They had to
bus?
get on buses.
I think that was a different bus.
It was.
There wasn't any people on that bus.
The white buses?
No, the yellow bus. It just ran past.
There was no people in the buses.
Yeah, they were. It was full of
I
people.
gotta talk to ask Pablo when they.
I don't
Right, the
know.
problem
If
is-
it's not happening in here, I don't know about it. No one tells me anything.
It'd be like that.
I
Mr.
feel like they
Weber
might
told
be
me he
going
was
to-
going to Wichita.
Oh, okay.
They're not going
It's a football thing.
They're not going to 3.
What do you read?
No, they already gone.
Mr. Weber
No.
Weber's already gone. I'm a TA for a 6 hour.
Did they leave with the football players?
The Spirit Bus don't leave till 3 o'clock.
Well, Weber's gone. He's part of
He said it takes a long time to get down there in Wichita.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. All I know is that the crumbs is really
That was
cool
one
and
of
right.
that was one of the 35 people.
You totally don't.
Brooklyn, you want me to help you write your
Paper,
story?
William?
No,
I have
this was the
paper.
best thing. I'm
It
gonna-
might be better if you were writing on a desk.
I didn't know
Shall I move this thing for you?
Re-recording.
What are you crying
I'll
about?
give you this back when you're all done with your paragraph. Sir,
Can we see a picture?
I see how it is.
that is how it is.
Dang, all these screen recordings, like.
Yeah, because on the paper it said it was leaving at
Your
3:20.
points, buddy.
I have a question.
Okay, here's what I found.
Thank you.
Remember they ate for 2 hours?
Because I didn't
digested
see,
for
I didn't
2
see
hours
Layla.
and slept for 2 hours.
Because she's going. She wasn't in that group.
Okay, so
Yeah, I don't
The
think they.
ginger cut.
And then, yeah,
They
in
didn't have none of
the,
their stuff. They didn't have their bags.
yeah, in the
I see you got the rugs.
people that do the thing, the people that's in the friend that was here on the team.
The tribe?
Yeah, the tribe, the tribe was supposed to go there. I didn't see none of them on
And
there.
then Bona would have just told us at lunch, like,
Yeah.
we're leaving.
I don't think they left yet. let's choose our
Right, 'cause
topics.
I'm
What
on
are you
that-
guys
and
gonna
there's
write
like-
about?
And there's only like 10 people going to that game.
You're gonna write about the bison? Okay. So you can. Your
Okay,
first
here you go.
sentence
Can you
is-
help me?
Yeah, I can write it. You want to tell me what to say?
What am I supposed to say?
Okay. What
I didn't know.
is something that interested you? It doesn't have to be about the field trip. Remember, we had 2 guest speakers come. We did the web search. You worked on it with Shania.
I personally love the stew you made.
Thanks. Did you try the recipe?
I didn't really, you know. I kind of be forgetting a lot.
I did look it up though, the Three Sisters.
So you could write about the food we tried. Remember, we made the soup and you thought it would be gross, but it was all right.
Oh yeah, we can talk about this too.
Yeah. Do you remember the
We could talk about
We
you.
can talk about your soup. Do you remember the ingredients in it?
With corn in there.
There was corn
Squash.
and squash
And that's all.
and beans.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, there was carrots in there.
Mm-mm.
Okay, we can talk about this.
Okay.
There was corn in there. Squash.
So the soup.
Beans.
Dang, I'm thinking about how.
And I love the
big
pumpkin
holes were
stuff.
in the-
The pumpkin was nice. It was odd.
A cornbread. I didn't know you could do that without a crust.
I don't want to hurt your feelings or anything, but cornbread is
Yeah.
I've
I
had
like
some
it better like in the soup.
in the
Is it bison like that?
Yep, yeah, that's what bison.
Oh, you're back.
So,
What you
so
Snacks.
why did we eat that food?
What, you want me to help you write out this, memory of this week?
Where do those ingredients
Alright, which
grow?
part of this did you like? Did you like the
Yeah.
student, K-State students coming here to talk?
Yeah,
Did
they
you like
come
this
from
is-
here,
oh,
right?
yeah.
They're Kansas
Some of them
ingredients.
come.
Or pumpkin
Some of them
stuff?
come from
You,
Mexico.
right?
Cornbread?
Disgusting.
But they're
I
all
felt like a
from
Native
North
American
America.
eating.
So do you remember that word I
Yeah.
described
Two
to
part,
us?
two things.
And then we go out to the, go into the park,
Yeah,
and see those magnificent buffalo.
yeah, because they wouldn't
Right,
like,
it's a
they wouldn't have like
babies.
called us down.
You're
And the magnificent men, you can see that
Look
like
at that cheese.
10 or 12
They would
point
have called us
buck
down.
running across.
Oh, what I
Yeah, because
How do you not love that?
Oh,
Are you guys going
Cheyenne,
to
I will help you
God. I
write it.
didn't go. I'm not.
Yes, you don't.
I will be your scribe. You just
I can
sit
do
and
it.
snack
What are you writing about?
talk and I will write down your.
Do you have a fork? No.
Okay,
No. Do your own writing, Cheyenne.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get her.
Let me write. Let me
I think
write.
it's
She can write it.
Okay.
Oh, she got back.
There you
You
go.
could help.
Cheyenne.
I'll choke your ass, boy. That's why I like it.
So, they're in
You might like it, though.
and then, and then go ask Miss Crawford if she has.
Yeah.
What else would you like to know about it? Or what other questions?
Don't ask about that. Don't even ask about that.
It's not something
What was that?
Which part of the,
Things.
things did you like?
Bro, why you chewing like that and looking at me?
Did you want a piece of paper?
What part that I like? What part that I like?
Eddie on the ground.
I like just being home.
Okay, wait a minute, let me see. The Flint Hills unit.
It's for poor people.
Would you like
One
to
thing
learn
I would
more
like-
about indigenous
One-
foods?
Oh, shit.
No.
The one
Will you try
thing.
cooking indigenous foods?
She wants to
We'll
hold
sit
it.
by saying, I don't want to know more about it, but I won't try cooking it.
Okay.
Are you scribing for them?
I was trying to Brooklyn, yeah.
Flint Hills
I need you to
unit.
send that to my bra.
So like you can touch it?
Oh, shit.
One of them is mouth. One of them is mouth.
Huh?
What would you like?
Like, being out there, enjoying nature, you feel me?
Stand on the strap.
Yeah, enjoying nature, you feel me?
There you go.
Breathing all that fresh air.
Thank you.
No, it's not making me
You're welcome. Thank you for participating.
Breathing in all
What
that
else?
fresh air.
What else?
Can I read your thoughts?
Did you think the scenery was pretty?
Yeah. Yeah, it was all
Alright, give
beautiful.
me some.
It was all beautiful and stuff, you know. Scenery was nice, pretty. Like if that scenery was a female,
Thank you,
she was
Brendan.
my baby mom. You feel me? Huh?
You
Don't-
want to
don't
learn
put
more
that.
about
Don't
oak
put
trees?
that. Don't put that.
I didn't even hear.
Yeah, the scenery
Oh,
was
about
nice,
the
right?
rock.
Beautiful.
Sorry.
Yeah, more about the rock formation.
Like in the
Have you
bison,
taken physical
you
science?
know, natural,
Yeah.
Tell
in the
me
natural,
about the bison. What did you like about them?
I was just in their natural habitat. They
Dude,
weren't
every
stressed
time I
out.
went
And
to that class,
they were just feeling good. They were doing their thing.
I just did my stuff.
I'm just gonna put.
I'm gonna say too much.
And they what? They look good?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
You done?
Hey,
I'm listening.
you don't need to look at your phone.
There's even more.
Sir.
Are we done?
Okay, what would you like to learn more about?
Two.
After this week, something in this area. And we have to go over that.
Back to my third one.
Not lunch hour. You had all fifth lunch.
Fifth lunch.
Second lunch after fifth hour.
Yeah. I ate.
Yeah, we went in the
Why is it
second
something
time
else?
we got to talk about eating during class. Okay? So
You
save your
watched
snacks
it.
till after school, okay?
Did you tell your mom about the three sisters?
They stopped.
They wouldn't announce that.
Yeah, they stopped it to go to
Because y'all are still in the middle of school. They
Shut up, bro.
Yeah, they have them
As you guys are,
Nah, I didn't tell my mom about
as
it.
you guys are
I want to look at these.
may I have your attention for a
Okay,
second?
what would you like to learn about out of this?
Guys, can I have your attention for a second? Thank you. While you're finishing up your paragraph, be thinking about the assignments you may or may not be missing. It's your responsibility to check your folder and make sure they're in the turn-in sheet. You can ask me if you need new copies of assignments, but make sure everything is in because I'm updating the grade book on Monday, and I don't want you guys to miss any points.
Okay, so I'm gonna say something about picture, okay? Okay, that's what.
And I update the grade book in one picture.
Are you done recording?
Yeah, do you want to pause it for me?
Yeah.
Thank you for
I don't want them to see me.